Do you find it hard to make big decisions and navigate complex choices? It might be that it's time for a change in a relationship or your career or life in general, but you feel stuck, unsure about how to move forward and make the right decision. If you're unclear about how to make this choice, well then this video is for you. We're going to explore the life-changing skill of detecting Kairos moments to help you discover the best next step. Life has so many twists and turns, and what works in one season of life won't necessarily work forever. At some stage, you're going to get stuck in a moment and need some guidance. You might feel stagnant in a job, or stuck in a relationship, or just restless for an adventure. Or maybe disappointed by success, which is sometimes the worst type of stuck, where you're achieving everything you set out to achieve and yet somehow still feel dissatisfied. I've been in all these situations where I felt stuck in a moment and unsure about what to do next, lost in the fog and wondering how to make the tough decisions needed to move forward. I mean, on the one hand, there's logic, and I'm a huge fan of logic and reasoning. Writing a pros and cons list, coming up with multiple options, and determining the next strategic step. I mean, this is my bread and butter as a productivity consultant, where I help people to select a clear goal, to break those goals down into next actionable steps, and then to make progress one step at a time to achieve small manageable tasks. But logic and strategy has its limitations because we're also emotional, spiritual, and intuitive beings, and what we see as logical is severely limited. Auschwitz survivor Viktor Frankl suggested that it is our personal responsibility to find meaning. But meaning is something that we detect rather than create. In other words, our life purpose is something we perceive by paying attention, and this requires a different set of skills and habits. This is where the spiritual dimension of life comes in. Learning to pay attention to a bigger operating system, to experience a broader data set in order to make wise choices. And the way we do this is through what the ancient Greeks called Kairos. The best decisions I've ever made in my life, from my choice of partner, to relocating cities, to building a house, starting a business, writing a book, even launching this YouTube channel, have all been in response to Kairos moments. I first discovered the secret of Kairos moments from my mentor, who was taught by his mentor, and ever since then, I've been living the Kairos life. This is a simple but reproducible way of perceiving your world. And if you put it into practice and learn the skills of detecting Kairos moments, it'll undoubtedly help you make better decisions and change the trajectory of your life. So in this video, I want to outline what I mean by Kairos moments and to give you a practical framework to help you perceive these moments in your own life. It'll open up a counterintuitive way to help you make important decisions, change your mindset, shift your actions, and therefore live an intentional life. So what is a Kairos moment? Kairos is an ancient Greek term for time, but it's not the type of time that we understand in the Western world. The English language is limited. We only have one concept for time, but the ancient Greeks understood time in a number of ways. The first concept of time is chronos time, which is the passing of time. Chronos is the root word for chronological. It's what happens when we look at the clock or the calendar. It's tick-tock time, measured in hours and minutes and seconds. It's how most of us run our lives. I mean, it's chronos when you rush out the door at 7:56 in order to catch the bus. It's chronos when you have to submit a paper by close of business. It's time measured by the clock, and for many of us, it's all we know. But the ancient Greeks had a second concept of time, and it's a different concept altogether, and the word is Kairos. Kairos is a significant moment in time. The idea that some moments have more significance than others. It's the type of time that stands still. It's those significant moments that you remember above the rest, beyond the ticking of the clock. These are the defining moments of your life, both good and bad, the moments that truly stand out when you reflect on the meaning of your life. You know, it's a Kairos moment when your wife walks down the aisle and says, "I do." It's a Kairos moment when you hold your newborn baby for the first time. It's a Kairos moment when you try to chainsaw on a ladder and break your leg. Whoops. Or when you get a promotion, or see a sunrise, or make that momentous choice not to drive after drinking too much at the pub. Kairos moments are sliding door moments. They're more significant than the everyday passing of chronos time, but only if we pay attention to them and allow them to change our lives. And that's when we start to live the Kairos life. Here's the thing, we all have Kairos moments, even if we don't have a language for them, and even if we let them pass us by. There are big Kairos moments like a global pandemic or the death of a close friend, or small Kairos moments like a warm hug or a challenging conversation or a meaningful lyric in a song. And if we attune ourselves to these moments and do something about them, well, then we can begin to experience something of the spiritual life. I like the analogy that Kairos moments are like page turners that become chapter turners that eventually enrich the story of your life. I mean, you can speed through life so rushed and busy that you miss almost everything, or you can slow down, make space, and pay attention to the daily Kairos moments that act like beacons, guiding your way and giving you hints about how life can and should be lived. In other words, Kairos is not just a concept of time, but the secret to living an intentional and meaningful life. To detect life's meaning and the wonderfully unique direction your life might take. And that's why it's important. So let's get practical. Let me teach you a framework to help you perceive and act on the Kairos moments in your everyday life. I mean, this isn't my framework, but it has transformed the way in which I make decisions personally. It was taught by my mentor, Andy Goodacre, who was taught by his mentor, Rich Robinson, who was taught by Mike Breen, who came up with this language and model based on the teachings of Rabbi Jesus. I mean, in the book of Mark, Jesus famously said, the Kairos has come. The divine presence is here. Change your mind and change your actions in response to the good news. So the Kairos has come. In other words, it's available to you. There are Kairos moments available to all of us this day, this week, this month, if we open our eyes and learn to pay attention. It's like you're walking through life and then, bam, something happens out of the ordinary, and that acts as your Kairos. That's the moment when you have a decision to make. You can speed along, ignoring the moment, or you can make space to pause and reflect on that moment, allowing it to change the trajectory of what you do next, which is what Mike Breen calls walking the Kairos circle. I mean, a Kairos moment can be anything. It can be individual or shared. It can be positive or negative. It can be dramatic or mundane. But it always holds the potential for a divine experience. That is, a moment of significance, of awe, or wonder, or challenge, or insight, or transformation. But only if we slow down and make space to perceive it. So a Kairos could be a conversation with a friend. It could be a compliment. Could be an interesting idea. Could be anything that stands out as being important. It could be something that offends you. It could be a sentence that you read in a book. Something that stands out as an amazing idea that gets under your skin, a bit like a stone in the shoe. A Kairos might be outdoors in nature. A rainbow, listening to birdsong, maybe a gust of wind that nearly pushes you off your bike and makes you curious about whether there's meaning. It might be a near miss, like when I nearly stepped on a poisonous snake in the middle of nowhere on a remote walking path. Or a small win, like the first time I spoke on stage and realized that it felt a bit like how I was meant to be. There are Kairos moments everywhere if you choose to pay attention to them. And when you notice them, they can connect you with the divine. So when you perceive a Kairos moment, a moment of significance in time that wakes you up and helps you pay attention, well then what should you do about it? And this is what Mike Breen calls walk the Kairos circle. The first step is to change your mind, and the second step is to change your actions. The Kairos has come. Change your mind. That's the first step. The Greek word used in this passage by Jesus is metanoia. Meta meaning to change, and noia meaning thoughts or mind. So when we experience a Kairos moment, our job is to change our mind. Here's where some English translations of Jesus' teaching can be confusing, because most scholars translate the original word metanoia as the religious word repent, which is fine so long as you understand this word to mean a change in your thinking, because a response to a Kairos moment is to change your mind. Simple. And this is such an important step because most of us are very reluctant to change our thinking. And we get stuck in our old ways of seeing the world, of thinking about things. And from time to time, we need a nudge, that kind of aha moment to shake us out of our mindsets, to break our schema of the world and to help us propel into new ways of acting. Let me give you an example. When I was a child, my family and I went to America and we got to go to Universal Studios. I mean, this is the first time I ever saw how they made superhero movies using a green screen, which was so cool at the time. You could stand in front of a green screen and pretend that you're flying like Superman with clouds superimposed behind you, and it would look like you were flying. And at the end of the demonstration, the presenter asked if there were any 13-year-old boys in the audience who would like to volunteer and come up on stage and be part of a show. The special volunteer would get to be part of a scene from the movie E.T., riding Elliot's bike with E.T. in the basket so they could fly over the moon. I mean, it was so cool. My dad, he started nudging me because I was 13, put your hand up. And I desperately wanted to volunteer. I felt nervous and self-conscious, and I took too long to put my hand up. And just as I was about to raise my hand, another young boy in the crowd put his hand up, and he was chosen. And he got to walk on stage and sit on a bike and see himself fly over the moon with E.T. I didn't have a language for it at the time, but that was a Kairos moment for me. It was a sliding door moment in time. I remember feeling sad and disappointed that I just didn't have the bravery to put my hand up. I lost literally a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I would never get back. And I thought about it for ages. And as a result of that Kairos, I changed my mind. I made a decision from that day forward to be the first person to put up my hand when I saw an opportunity in order to say yes. It was a mindset shift that has lasted me for most of my life. That when I see an opportunity, rather than step back in fear or worry or insecurity, I step forward in courage, even if my emotions aren't following that, and I say yes. I put up my hand. And that metanoia, that mind change, has led to a consistent change in behavior that has shaped the trajectory of my life. Because changing our mind is not enough. That's just the first step. The texture of life is the sum of what we do, not what we think. If I had changed my mind, but not put up my hand on a regular basis after that, well, then nothing would have actually changed. I wouldn't have asked my wife out for our first date. I wouldn't have started a business or a podcast. I wouldn't have launched this YouTube channel. It required more than a change in thinking, a metanoia experience. It required the next step, which is a change in actions in response to your changed mindset. The Greek word being pistoa, which really means a change in action or belief in response to your change in mindset. Again, translation from Greek to English is difficult, but it really means to lean in the direction of your newfound thoughts. Meaning that when you change your mind, you change your habits in response to your new thinking. Now, before I move on, I do want to acknowledge that for those who come from a Christian tradition, you may have a different interpretation of this passage, and that's okay. But I do believe that the spiritual life involves dying and rising, letting go, picking up, changing your mind, and changing your actions in response to those spiritual or divine moments. And I'd encourage anyone who is curious about Kairos moments to pick up the Book of Mark. It takes about an hour, read it for yourselves, and learn from the ancient teachings. A link is in the show notes. But if this idea of Kairos has connected with you, I would encourage you to make space to do something about it. I mean, don't move on and watch my next YouTube video, even though it's good for the YouTube algorithm. Don't scroll social media and just keep distracting yourself with that next idea and that next thing. Put your phone away. Find a quiet moment to reflect and pause on two things. Firstly, can you identify a Kairos moment from your past? A moment of significance. I mean, what happened? How did it impact your thinking? How did it change your behaviors? How did it change the direction of your life? I know that you've had them. You just may not have had a language for them until now. Try to get a sense of the Kairos moments that have already shaped your story. And the second thing, can you identify a Kairos moment from today? I guarantee that if you open your eyes and make space to pay attention, you will notice an aha moment, a moment of significance, a Kairos moment in time that has some small significance for today. What is the high point of your day, or what has been the low point of your day? Have you had any surprising or interesting interactions today that might act as your Kairos? Or maybe this is your Kairos. What is one idea from this video that stands out to you and has particular meaning? Something that speaks to you, not broadly, but that actually impacts who you are and how you're thinking. I mean, be curious and creative. I mean, once you start to look for Kairos moments, they'll pop up everywhere, even if you're not expecting them. And it's super interesting and it's fun. And when you notice these things, allow them to change your mind and do something about them. By making space day by day, week by week, you will begin to experience what I call the Kairos life. Rather than being stuck in a moment, overwhelmed with confusion, or just living on autopilot, you'll get to experience the awe and wonder of a life unfolding in meaningful, intentional ways. It's about living a life with purpose. That's what it means to live the Kairos life. So in my next video, I want to explore and unpack this idea further. I want to share a few personal stories about how Kairos moments have changed my career, shifted the city in which I've lived, and impacted my relationships. My hope is that my stories might help inspire you to look for your own unique Kairos moments in order to make space to detect your own calling, your own sense of purpose, your own next step. And all of it is about being a space maker, making space to live a meaningful, purpose-filled life. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, I'd love you to subscribe. It would mean the world to me. And please leave a comment. I'd love to hear about your Kairos moments, and I'd love to hear about what stands out to you from this video. And as always, make space.